Welcome to Quick History Facts, where we explore the stories of the past that have shaped our world. In this episode, we'll be taking a closer look at how the Tudor family came to power in England after the Plantagenets. To understand how the Tudors came to power, we first need to understand the Plantagenet dynasty. The Plantagenets ruled England from 1154 to 1485, and their reign was marked by wars, political intrigue, and some of the most famous figures in English history. The most well-known Plantagenet monarchs were probably King Richard the Lionheart and King Henry V, both of whom led England in wars against France. But the dynasty also saw its fair share of civil wars, with the Wars of the Roses being the most famous example. This was a long and bloody conflict between two branches of the Plantagenet family, the House of Lancaster and the House of York. The Tudors, who would eventually replace the Plantagenets as rulers of England, were actually a relatively minor family before the 15th century. However, they were able to capitalize on the chaos and instability of the Wars of the Roses to rise to power. The first Tudor monarch was Henry VII, who came to power in 1485 after defeating Richard III in the Battle of Bosworth Field. Henry was able to establish his claim to the throne through his mother, Margaret Beaufort, who was a descendant of the Plantagenet dynasty. His rise to power was a complex and lengthy process that took several years to fully establish. Margaret was the great-granddaughter of John of Gaunt, the third surviving son of King Edward III. However, the Beaufort family had been barred from the succession to the English throne by a parliamentary act in 1399, which meant that Margaret's claim was not straightforward. Despite this, Margaret and her supporters began working to establish her son's claim to the throne. One of the key players in this effort was Henry Tudor himself, who was living in exile in France during the Wars of the Roses. In 1483, Margaret and her allies began planning a rebellion against King Richard III, who had taken the throne from the very young Yorkist King Edward V. The rebellion was unsuccessful, but it established Henry as the leading Lancastrian claimant to the throne. Henry continued to build support among the Lancastrian nobility and exiles, and in 1485 he launched another invasion of England. This time, he was successful, defeating Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field and claiming the throne for himself. Margaret played a key role in this victory, both through her political and financial support of her son and through her own military connections. Her husband, Thomas Stanley, was a powerful nobleman who was able to provide military aid to Henry's cause. Once Henry had secured the throne, he took steps to further establish his claim through his mother. He issued a royal charter that recognized Margaret's Beaufort ancestry and legitimized her marriage to Thomas Stanley. He also gave Margaret the title of Countess of Richmond and made her one of the most powerful women in England. So while Henry's claim to the throne through his mother was not immediate or straightforward, it was ultimately successful. Margaret's political and financial support, combined with Henry's military victories and political savvy, helped to establish the Tudor dynasty. Henry VII also married Elizabeth of York, the daughter of Edward IV and a member of the rival House of York, which helped to bring some stability to the country. Henry ruled for 24 years, during which time he focused on strengthening the monarchy and establishing a strong financial foundation. He was succeeded by his son, Henry VIII, who is perhaps the most famous Tudor monarch. The Tudor dynasty ruled England for over a century, and their reign saw some of the most significant events in English history. Henry VIII's break with the Catholic Church, for example, led to the establishment of the Church of England and had far-reaching consequences for the country's religious and political landscape. The Tudors also oversaw a period of cultural and artistic flourishing, with figures like William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Thomas Wyatt all thriving during this time. So there you have it. A quick history lesson on how the Tudor family came to power after the Plantagenets. The Tudor dynasty played a crucial role in shaping the history of England, and their legacy can still be seen in many aspects of English culture and society today. Thanks for watching, and join us next time as we explore another fascinating chapter in history.